Awesome. Okay. So this is going to be, we'll just share the screen here. All right, so we have our C1 low mid workshop, Wednesday, August 23rd, 2023, and then facilitated by me, Jonathan Strickland of the DG branch. We'll just go over some overall objectives for C1 quickly. C1 uses the unique ESL methodology of Chungdom learning to achieve the following goals: develop academic language skills for knowledge acquisition and critical expression, to nurture critical thinking through analysis and evaluation of content, and to enhance topic knowledge through terminology and knowledge maps. So I think most of us, I'm guessing, did this like pre-test where they asked you different questions about what objective is it for the Skim Connect page or reading or listening. You'll do also a post-test about that as well. And then there'll be a survey at the end kind of asking how I did, how we could improve, if you would prefer to have this in person and whatnot, okay? Great. So I would probably compare, I'm guessing we do have some instructors that are brand new, who have not been to Chungdom before, but then we might have some instructors who maybe have been here their second term, they've done A2 and D1 class. So I would probably compare this class similar to A2, but I think it's a little more, there's more of a topic that you do discuss and you continue that same topic throughout the entire class. So I'm going to kind of review what a C1 bridge class would look like. I kind of taught that class previously. I have some of my media cards in there as well. I would kind of give some things with that, okay? So for this, it's talking about the existence of dragons. And the first thing that would be the first part that you kind of go over would be kind of connecting. You should probably spend about 10 minutes or so on this section. And the objective of this is to kind of generate interest in this topic. So kind of what we have here, we have the existence of dragons. For this is usually just kind of like the cover page. You do have sort of the connect page happening on this next page. You can use this page and the next page though to kind of do both. And what I kind of did is I kind of have this sort of here. It's kind of like a unicorn reading a newspaper saying they don't exist, and here's the proof, and you can see that they're kind of scared. Little something funny or whatever it may be. Also, maybe there might be some vocabulary words that they're not familiar with, like the word exist. So I kind of have this here. Exist means to be alive, be real, to live. Kind of has some sentences with it as well. Many people do not believe in the existence of ghosts. Existed mainly to annoy me. Exist building is now used for other reasons, okay? You could also maybe ask a question to students, maybe get their opinion if they think dragons are real or are they made up. You can send this to students, maybe ask more clarifying questions. Why do you think they're real? Why do you think they're not real? And you can even maybe go into some content that they might know. Harry Potter, dragons in there. You see Spirited Away has dragons. How to Train Your Dragon, and even like Mulan, okay? The main point of this, you want to generate interest in them, try to get them really excited. Dragons are the best thing in the world. It's kind of like what you're trying to do. For this page here, it does have some more content to kind of go through. You can kind of expand these pictures as well, kind of shows dragon here. And then here's some maybe words that might be related to the topic. People say maybe dragons came from like dinosaurs or reptiles, and I kind of show like, oh, here's a T-Rex from Jurassic World, or maybe talk about different types of reptiles like turtles or tortoises, crocodiles, things like that. And then you can kind of go into the main being dragons and how dragons are considered a mythical creature, similar to like a minotaur or a centaur or Pegasus or unicorn or something like that. And then you can kind of go through talking about like scaled snakes or winged lizards, or the fact that dragons apparently are supposed to be breathing fire like this, or that they have magical powers. Talking like Dr. Strange. And then down below, they kind of have this question, sort of like, what comes to your mind when you think of dragons, like a word association. So you could ask like, oh, Trevor, what do you think of dragons? And Trevor might say, oh, Game of Thrones, or I think of How to Train Your Dragon, or Harry Potter, or something like that, okay? The whole point of this, you just want them to be very interested in this topic, okay? Most topics, usually they'll have a good understanding of beforehand, okay? So here's some tips and tricks. I would say use a variety of media cards to get students interested. You can use either that first cover page like I did, or the second page to connect with the students. Try and go over vocabulary words maybe they might struggle with, something like the word exist, like we did there. If you do play a video, please try and keep your videos to a minimum. I would say for your entire class, you should probably spend only 5 minutes maximum with videos. And also, if you do play a video, try to have a question in there as well. Don't just show a video with no content or no context. Just, yeah. And then use media cards with maybe content that students might be familiar with, like Harry Potter, How to Train Your Dragon, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Is there any questions about this connect page? Okay, I see you. Okay, yeah, so again, you're trying to get them interested in this topic. The whole point and objective of here, you just want to try to generate interest in this topic, okay? I believe
Oh, sorry, Jonathan, just had a question about the topic map. Did we have to cover all of the topic map, or is there just the most important
No, so
part?
like this part right here, this is more just like words or phrases that maybe might be related to dragons. So it might be a good idea to talk about dinosaurs and reptiles. You could talk about origins and natural history and things like that. These are just words that they might also see later on. So it'd be a good idea. Like I do have something for dinosaurs and reptiles, talking about like mythical creatures. You could talk about even winged lizards, things like that as well. But I wouldn't say you have to do every single word. It would be a good idea just to get them a nice understanding of what these are. Because they will maybe talk about and might do a comparison to dinosaurs or reptiles later on in the lesson, or maybe talk about how they are a mythical creature, how they could breathe fire or have magical powers. So, yeah. Great. Any other questions for this page? Awesome. Okay, and then we go to the next section, okay? And our next section is going to be the activate section. This section, you're going to be objective is to preview topic-related words appearing in the reading passage. So for this, you'll have vocabulary words here on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side, it kind of has the word and also a sentence with it as well. I have a media card to go through each word, so that way students can maybe have a better understanding. I would also probably suggest have a synonym or two of each word to kind of show the students what it means. So for example, the first word is present, like present in nature. I might show this picture and be like, oh, hey, Mike, what do you notice about this picture? And maybe you'll say, oh, hey, the bunny and present, they're raising their hand, right? Like we just kind of did earlier with attendance. So you could write, oh yeah, present, exactly. That means like being here, okay? Also, for the students, in their workbook, they will have the vocabulary list page at the last few pages of the lesson 1. These words will be there. They will probably have the English word, the Korean word, and they might have another synonym in there as well, but try to provide maybe one or two different ones to try and give them a better understanding, okay? And then same thing, the second word is creature, like a furry creature. I might show them this picture and be like, oh, look, they have like a fox, a bear, an owl. You have some other animals down below. You can kind of say creature is kind of like animal or beast. And some of these words might possibly be on the vocab quiz that they will have next week. So I do try to get them to write down a synonym for it as well. If time does permit, I would also maybe like them to generate a sentence with it that's not this exact sentence. That's kind of like what I usually like to do later on in the term. Oh, for the connect page, that should be about 10 minutes or so. For this activate page, again, this should also be about 10 minutes. Some tips and tricks, try to use media cards for every single vocab word. Also even here for like genetic hair loss, I kind of have this showing like genes, and then I kind of show genetic hair loss here, like dad and son kind of thing like this, okay? Try to have a synonym or two prepared in advance for students. Use content that could be familiar to them. Like I think I have a media card about like aurora kind of happening. Students might be familiar with that as well for a phenomenon that happens in the world. And also if time permits at the end, have students generate a sentence or two for each word. There's going to be an activate page for this reading part, and then there also is going to be an activate page for the listening section as well. Both are going to look almost exactly the same. Any questions for the activate page? Check those two in a little bit. Awesome. Okay. And then next section is going to be the skim section. For this section, I did also open and have the workbook open because this is where they're going to be annotating and marking a lot, I would say, in their workbook, as well as maybe using the tablet. At the beginning of each lesson, there's going to be a skill theory that every single lesson will have. So for the first lesson here, their skill theory is going to be talking about topic, main idea, and finding supporting details. And it will kind of have a sentence to kind of talk about it. Today's lesson, you're going to learn topic, main idea, supporting details, topic, what it's about, main idea, what they're saying. Then you'll have thesis statement, major details, and minor details. There is also something that we use for this section called Cheongdam pizza. And Cheongdam pizza is something that I probably have in the skim section of every single lesson, no matter what. And this is just kind of like what we use to show how to find a topic. It says what it is, what the author's writing about, how to find it. You should look in the title, first paragraph, and you look for repeated words. Okay, so if we look here in the first paragraph in the title, we see our title is about the existence of dragons. I would probably give the students maybe like 1 minute, 30 seconds, look for repeated words, and they should be able to find quickly that we see dragons, dragons, they is referring to dragons, dragons, etc., etc. So we can kind of identify, oh, and even down here, let me just make sure I have that. We see dragons as well. We see it quite a few times. We do see in the title. So I would probably write over here on the tablet, topic is about dragons. Okay. I would also have the students do this in the workbook. It is very important to have them annotate and write in their workbook because they will have the passage right there. Okay. Sorry, I know my boxes aren't lined up, but I would have them put a little box around the topic, and then in this area right here, you can see this. This is kind of like a little gray area where you can write more things as well. So I would have them use a box. That's kind of the thing we use for topic, and then have here, I would write topic equals dragons. Okay. And again, you have this Cheongdam pizza. Maybe you could have students write this in their workbook as well. They do have something kind of similar here, talking about topic and main idea and supporting details, but this gives a little bit more about it. It kind of shows like what it means, which is what the author's writing about, gives you strategies on how to find it as well. And if you notice here, it has symbols to use for each different important part. So for instance, topic, you can see it's kind of has a box around it like so. The thesis statement is 2 underlines and main idea is 1. This major detail, I usually just do this sort of squiggly line, I would say, to finding that out as well. Also, during this section, you do see like this sort of audio button. I would not suggest using this at all because that just is going to play the entire listening and or the entire passage, and we don't really need that. You can press these light bulbs, which will kind of find what the main ideas are for the body paragraphs, and then it will help us find what our thesis statement would be later on. These guiding questions will be like, look at the title to find the topic. You can find the key phrases that represent the author's main thing, and then we'll talk about patterns of organization here in a second. Okay. So our first part that we find, I would do this with the students right now, is just put the boxes around dragons like we did earlier. And then the next important thing we find is going to be, we can find it right here in Cheongdam pizza, that would be thesis statement. And thesis statement, author's opinion about our topic. It's going to be in the first paragraph, include our topic, and we need to look for signal words. Now, if you've done A2, you kind of have a familiarity already with signal words. You go through here, through skimming tips, you can kind of see other signal words as well. You see words like some, a few, many. For listings, if you're doing time order, it could be like evolution, before or after. Process could be like change, arise, emerge from. Definition is known for, is known as. And then we have cause and effect, reason, cause. And then down here, comparison. And the last one is contrast, like words like but, however, in contrast and on the other hand. So if we go back to the reading passage, usually also the last sentence of this will have our thesis statement, and we see here we have the word however. That's kind of like our clue word, and if we underline this 2 times, some people wonder if it's possible that dragons have existed. That would be kind of like our thesis statement today. Now I would probably try and do guiding questions as much as I can with students to try and get them to find it first without me doing it so much. Maybe go over like different signal words, what those are, make sure it includes the topic, show this sort of like Cheongdam pizza thing as well, and also do make sure that they do write this in their workbook. So then I would write thesis equals, and then it is kind of a long sentence, but I would just be like, some people wonder if it's possible for dragons to have existed. Okay. Okay. For this section also, it does say here in this skim section, this should be only 10 minutes. I would say I definitely do spend more than 10 minutes in this time. And I do some parts of this skim section and this summarize section kind of together, okay? I try to find topic, main ideas, and major details, and some, topic, thesis statement, major details, and some minor details here, if I can. Maybe in the first few weeks, especially because time management might be a thing that you'll run into, especially with this class, probably just focus on finding topic, finding the thesis statement, and then going down and finding those main ideas, okay? And then we also have something called patterns of organization, or POO. When we talk about patterns of organization, it's just kind of saying how an author organizes information. Usually we'll have listing be the first few. Listing would be kind of like an example of a shopping list or favorite countries or something like that. Usually when you have a list, the most important things are at front. And if you look here, words like first, second, next, also, etc. are words that you'll kind of use for that as well, okay? So if we look here, kind of finished with the first paragraph, we found our topic of dragons, we found a thesis statement. Some people wonder if it's possible that they existed. If we look at the beginning of paragraph number 2, we do see kind of like that signal word for us, that transition word of first of all, and then we can see here our first main idea, right here. Dragons were present in cultures all across the world, okay? Again, I would have students mark this in their workbook, okay? Really important, okay? You can also use Chungnam Pizza here, does talk about main idea, should be supportive of the thesis statement. You might need to ask some WH questions about our thesis statement as well. Like for instance, it says, however, some people wonder if it's possible for dragons to have existed. You could produce some WH questions like, why do people think they could have existed? Where could they have existed? When did people think they exist? Words like that. Try to have students produce those WH questions first, and try not to just give it to them right away if you can, okay? So that would be like the first main idea. Then if you want to, you can go through and do major details, but we'll kind of worry about that in the next section here. Oh, no, okay. Okay. Sorry, I'll leave something. Okay. And then if you move on to paragraph 3, we can see another signal word here talking about secondly. This secondly is kind of like a signal for us to find main idea number 2. And then I would also underline this one as well. Again, I would probably have this written in the margins. So I'd have like the topic written, the thesis statement written, and the main ideas written, okay? So they have main idea 1, main idea 2, and main idea 3, okay? Again, I would probably talk about Chungnam Pizza a lot. This is something that the students, you should try and have them memorize as much as possible. Maybe even have them write this in their workbook. You have the thesis statement, main idea, supporting it, ask those WH questions like we talked about. And then those major details we'll kind of do in the next section as well. For this one, you want to make sure that you review skill theories that are in the workbook. And again, that was kind of like this here. We talked about the topic, the main idea, and supporting details. Every single week, it will be maybe something a little different. So week 1 looks like this. You have the reading passage. Week 2, again, it's like kind of talking about topic and main idea, but just kind of saying how you find it, okay? And then review Chungnam Pizza with students. Have students annotate in their workbook, okay? So they have the passage again in the workbook, and make sure they write in this little margin area here. Go over patterns of organization. You'll probably have like listing first, but eventually you might have other ones as well. And then use guiding WH questions to support students if needed. Again, probably your first few weeks, you'll spend, this does say 10 minutes. I would probably say you'll spend a lot more than 10 minutes. So keep that in mind. And there are some sections in here that that as we go on, I might suggest skipping if time is something that a time issue is something you run into. Any questions for the skim section?
All right, Jonathan, does that mean we want them to annotate both on the reading and tablet and the workbook, even though
I would say that the workbook would be more important than the tablet, because that workbook is something that they bring with them every single day. There's going to be some things in here that you'll see later in the listening section that I literally am going to write notes in workbook because they're going to write it in their workbook. And the tablet, like this sort of thing, they can't bring home. And they can use that as a reference later on. So I've definitely had students where they're like, oh, teacher, no, I'm just doing it in the tablet. Like, no, you need to write this down because they'll see it next time and weeks and weeks and weeks. Really good question. Other questions about skin? Okay, yeah,
Actually, I do.
yeah, go for it.
Okay, when it comes to skim, you said the whole Changdan pizza and that you can annotate by like double underlining. Is it do you think we should also have them like circle transition words and everything like that as well, or?
Yes, so I would also do that. Yeah. So like how I sort of had like how I sort of had this where I'm like, oh, the word however is the transition word, and then I underlined it. I would do that and have them do that in the work.
So just have them annotate like the important parts.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
So they're going to annotate like I did here earlier, doing the box around dragons for that topic. Okay. And again, just repeated words you see, always going to be in the first paragraph. And eventually the students are just going to just know, especially when it's like week 10 and whatever. And then go ahead.
No, I was just wondering because like there are a lot of new students for C1 and C2 as well. So that's why like just have them like underline like the signal words and everything.
Yes. And I'm not sure, sometimes I believe signal words might be something that you do talk about a little bit later. And if you do look here, you do have these sort of skimming tips, and it does have some signal types as well here that you can kind of go over, I would say, the first few weeks. Like here for listing, words like some, a few. A lot of contrast, I would say, is going to be happening a lot. So you can show words like however, in contrast, but, on the contrary, unlike, those will be very common ones, I would think.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Great question. Awesome.
Sorry, Jonathan, one more.
Yeah, go for it.
On the skim page, are we actually saying, all right, guys, read paragraph 1 out loud, and then after doing that, we're actually going, okay, now try and find. Okay.
No, so the whole point of skim, you're trying to read through the passage quickly. Okay, so for example, let's say I'm actually teaching this right now. I'd be like, all right, guys, so welcome. Here's our skim page. If you open your workbook, you'll have this as well. And we're going to find important parts. So the first thing we're going to find is the topic. The topic is what the author's writing about. You usually find it in the title, first paragraph, and repeated words. That means words you've seen more than once. All right, friends, I'll give you 30 seconds, maybe 1 minute. Look in the title, look in paragraph 1. What are some words you see repeated? And I would just run it like that. There is going to be a discussion page where you can read the entire passage later on, but that is a page that I would suggest skipping over if time does not permit. Great question. Yeah, the whole point of this, you're trying to read through quickly, find those important parts like topic, main idea, thesis statements, major details. Good. Other questions? Great. And just again for skim, further understand ending of the topic and practice identifying the relationship between thesis and main idea. That's kind of the objective we want to do here. Okay. Our next section is going to be the summarize section. Okay. In summarize, you want to confirm understanding of logical connections between thesis, main idea, and major details. And that is going to be this next page. Okay. I like to do most of the things that would be on this summarize page on the skim page and have it annotated in their workbook. Okay. Because here on the summarized page, it says thesis statement, right? Some people believe that dragons could have existed. That's our thesis here. The first main idea is the first main idea in the passage, right? Present in many cultures across the world, okay? Usually also this major detail is something I would have annotated and have the students write down in their workbook with the sort of kind of, I think here they have this like dot line, but I do like a sort of squiggly one. And that way this can be done a little quicker than this 15 minutes. And you can kind of combine some skim and summarize almost together. Again, maybe your branch might be a little different. They want every page done a certain way. So always go to your FM for any questions like that as well. But here you have thesis statement, main idea, and define major details. You can kind of go through and ask maybe WH questions, talking about who questions, where questions, when questions, why, what, how questions, things like that, okay? So if we look at the first main idea, it says it's present in many cultures across the world. Maybe we could ask a question. You want to maybe have some questions in advance for students, but also maybe try to have them think of some on their own. So for example, I have written down like, oh, what cultures have dragons? If we look in paragraph 1, it talks about, oh, there's Western cultures and there's Eastern cultures. So that kind of answers that question. And then how are they similar? If we look here in the first paragraph, it says, they describe dragons in similar ways as huge creatures that could breathe fire and fly. And if you do this answer, it kind of shows that. They describe them similarly. Okay. Again, I have like Chungnam Pizza here to kind of use this as sort of a guide. Now, if we did already the thesis statement and main idea in major detail already on this previous page and have that written down, that major detail should be this right here. So they should be able to get that quite easily. Okay, same thing here. Main idea 2 is about, oh, they may be genetic. You could think of what examples have genetic mutation. The example is people being born with extra limbs or even tails, or mutant fruit flies that grow another set of wings. And then the third main idea, possible to breathe fire. Maybe you could ask, like, how is it unreal? And many things in nature seem unbelievable. Okay, and usually in this sort of reading passage, you could see those details here. So like here, you could see there are cases where people are born with extra limbs or even tails, okay? And mutant fireflies that grow another set of wings. That is there in the passage for them to kind of use as well, okay? And again, for the summarized page, our objective here, confirm understanding of logical connection between thesis, main idea, and major details. And some tips and tricks. Some of this section, I would say, can be reviewed in that previous skim section. I would probably spend more time on that skim section than I would on the summarized page. Have some WH questions prepared to help guide students in advance. Have students use the annotations in the workbook to support the answer. So like Antonio asked me earlier, oh, you should probably have them right in the workbook. You can also do this. There's a function that says a dual screen function on the tablet where you can look at this and the previous page at the same exact time, and they will be able to see this and that at the same time. Okay, and then, yeah, refer to the previous page as needed by using that dual screen function. Okay. And again, Chungnam Pizza is another thing I would really go over a lot with students here, because that's kind of what it is. We know our thesis statement is the same thesis that we used, our main idea, same main idea we used, and those details would probably be details that we would get in the previous section. Any other questions for the summarize? Great. I'll check that. Awesome. Okay, now we're going to be moving on to the scan section. The scan section is just like kind of answering different questions. Okay, for the scan section, you want to confirm comprehension to strengthen ability to answer questions about the passage. So usually for this, there's not very many different question types like they do have from A2 class, I would say. For example, they had like main idea questions, inference questions, prediction, vocabulary, pronoun reference, right? There might be some, but not all. So for example, here in our first question, this is kind of like a detailed question. How were dragons often portrayed in Eastern culture? So our WH word, how, other keywords, dragon often portrayed in Eastern culture. Then you could have them use the workbook that is in front of them, or they can go back to previous pages, and I would kind of just show them this, right? You look for the key details there. You have the key details that you can find in the passage. If you looked in paragraph number 2, it talked about Eastern cultures, and what did they say? Oh, they think they're majestic creatures with powerful powers. Or sorry, majestic creatures, yeah, magical powers, okay? For this, you'll have 1, 2, 3 questions that should be almost the same, going to be detailed questions. There might be other question types that will be talked about later on in the term, but this will be kind of the start. And then down below, you do have 2 vocabulary questions, okay? Usually for this one, I try to have a media card or something to kind of give them a little idea of what it can mean, like conquered is overcome and taking control of a place. Maybe have it in there. Have them use maybe a few sentences before and after, and similar to the vocabulary question in A2, maybe have them replace the word instead in place and read it through to see if it makes logical sense or not. Okay. For this section, about 10 minutes or so. So I would probably review this in the first few weeks with students and maybe have students try to justify. So for example, question 1, who can tell me what kind of question, WH question word? And then someone, Antonio, oh, the word how. Oh, exactly, thank you. What are some key details in there? Oh, Trevor might say, oh, dragon is often portrayed in Eastern culture. So we go back to the reading passage. Where did they talk about Eastern culture? Oh, paragraph 2. And they could kind of like go down and find it through there, okay? And then the same thing for the vocabulary questions as well. Some tips and tricks for this one. Try to review question types as a class first. such as the detail question, vocabulary, and there'll be other question types, I would say, later on. You could even maybe have them be independent later on, maybe give them like, oh, all right, you guys have 5 minutes, work with a partner or work independently, and kind of make it like that. Make sure they have justification they can go to. In paragraph 2, it says like that, okay? Find keywords in the question with students to give support if needed. If students are struggling with some, you can try to guide them. Oh, guys, look at paragraph 2, we talked about things like that, okay? Have students justify answers using the reading in the workbook. They probably won't be able to go back as much to the previous page for the passage as they would in the previous sections. So make sure they have their workbook for that, okay? And then have students work in teams or individually with a timer later on in the term. You can make a game out of it or something like that as well, if you'd like to do that. Any questions about the scan section?
Sorry, as the term progresses, will there any point that this turns into like an in-class quiz, or is it just more independent?
This one, it won't be an actual in-class quiz. So like, there's no simulation test or there's no like review test really in this compared to A2. You can make it into that though, to maybe get them like working in a team, maybe understanding with each other and things like that if you want to do that. But there's nothing really like that as A2 would have. So yeah, great question. And again, objective here, confirm comprehension and strengthen ability to answer questions about the passage, okay? Awesome, and then we do have this discuss page. Now, this discuss page, like Antonio asked earlier, this is where you would read the entire passage and try to have an open discussion with students. This is probably a page that I would skip a lot if time is not on your favor. Like if you're having, oh, I use so much time in skim and I use so much time for scan, and you know, first day I'm doing icebreakers, right? Like this is definitely a section that you could kind of skim over and maybe not talk about too much. You've kind of already read most of this passage already before by doing this skim and summarize and scan. So they do already have an idea, okay? But if you do want to, or do have time to do this, the objective here is you want to expand understanding and relevance of the passage by making connections between it and real life observations and experience. If you want to, as you read, maybe you can do like popcorn reading with your students. Usually these questions won't be this, where it says, what supports the reasons that dragon were present in cultures all across the world? Now, usually we'll have like an open-ended question for students, or you could probably think of your own, like, oh, where have you seen dragons? Oh, I saw dragons in Harry Potter. Again, you can have like a video if you'd like to as well. Like here's an example of a video. Maybe you want to show like a scene from Harry Potter like this. And again, when you do show a video, please maximum of only 5 minutes in your entire class, and try to have some questions like this, like here. How is the dragon portrayed in the scene? What kind of power does the dragon have? And what kind of appearance does it have? Okay. You could even ask some whole questions like, oh, do you think dragons could be real? But I asked that already in the previous one. You could have some other media cards in here as well to maybe generate interest, show the difference between Western and Eastern, things like that. Okay. Tips and tricks for this one. You can skip this page if time does not allow. Definitely if you're running out of time, this is one you can just skip over. Try to use open-ended questions to discuss. I'm guessing most of us, you did the C2 workshop. In that C2 workshop, they do talk a lot about open-ended questions and things like that, right? Because C2, you have only a few pages. So again, this one you can do that. And just like before, please keep videos to a minimum, 5 minutes maximum. Any questions about the discuss? Awesome. Okay, and that will be everything for the reading section. Reading section is now complete. And then you'll move on to the listening section and note-taking section. And for this section, again, there's another activate. And this activate is just like that reading activate. You'll have some vocabulary words, and you'll kind of have maybe the word in context or a sentence within, okay? Try to have a media card again for every single word to give them a better understanding. For example, the first word is talking about like solid evidence. You can use this. Oh, there's solid evidence that someone was walking here. It's real. It's good. You agreed on this, right? And then again, you can have a synonym as well here to maybe show good or real. Okay. And this is just exactly like the previous one. Okay. You want to preview related words that will be in the listening. Similar to the reading to activate page. Try to use media cards for every word. Try to have a synonym or two prepared in advance. try to use content familiar to students. And just like the last one, if time permits, maybe have students generate a sentence or word for each. These words will also be in that vocabulary list section at the end of unit 1 or lesson 1. And they can write there's like a little place they could write a synonym in there as well. And I always try to tell students like, oh, some of these words might be on our vocab quiz next week, to try and get them to be really interested and write down those synonyms and things like that. Any questions for activate page? Okay. And then I'm guessing, no, I think we're okay. I'll take care of that. Okay, and then we're going to go to the comprehend page. Now, this comprehend page is actually going to be 2 pages. You have this first page, which is kind of just listening to the different parts of the listening itself. You'll write down like the topic and thesis and talk about WH and main ideas and things like that. And then this next page right here is where you do a fill in the blank. Now, if anyone has done A2 class or things like that, this page is maybe a page that instead of using, I would write here, notes in workbook, and have students actually write Cheongdam notes, how we usually do notes, in the workbook instead of in here, okay? Because all this is they just fill in the blank with words. And that's not really, like usually for E2, right? We want to do ASK and things like that, okay? Okay, so the objective here for comprehend, we want to further understanding of the topic, identifying relationships between thesis and supporting details in a lecture. So let me just make sure you guys can listen. So we'll kind of do this first. It just says listen to part. We're going to listen and write down the topic. This is kind of similar to Cheongdam Pizza. Usually it's not the same as a reading, but we're going to listen to the beginning for words we hear repeated. Okay, and we'll kind of just do a little example.
Okay, class. How many of you know stories with dragons in them? I see that most of you do. But have you ever thought that dragons were real? Surprisingly, some people actually believe that dragons once existed. But today, we'll learn about how there is no solid proof that dragons were real.
Right, and as you listen, you probably heard the same topic before. Dragons was said 5 times, right? Usually the topic here will be the same topic that was done in the reading passage. Now, the only difference is usually this will be a contrast. So the reading passage talked about how dragons could have existed. This is going to be the complete opposite. This is talking about how there's no evidence. There's no solid proof that they did exist, okay? It will usually be like that, not always, but that will usually be how it goes. So then I would have students write down, oh, the topic is here, right? And then they're going to listen again and write down their thesis. They're going to listen for signal words or signal phrases. I would maybe show them this. This shows different signal phrases. Like they might say, oh, let's discuss, or I want to talk about, or we're going to learn about, okay? And I would have them maybe listen to that. And if they do here at the end, I won't play it again, but they do say there is no solid proof that dragons were real, okay? And then for this part, I would not have them write in the workbook. This one, I would have them use the tablet, okay? And then Cheongdam Pizza stuff there, okay? And then you could go down here and basically do, based on this thesis, predict what the main ideas could be. And this is where we might be able to generate some WH questions again. Maybe we could say, how is there no proof that dragons were real? What proof is there missing for dragons being real? And have them try and think of some things, okay? Then I would have them listen to this next part of the lecture. And this one, I would have them fill in the blank, okay? And then you play this. It's only going to be a short snippet of the entire listening. And they would kind of fill in dragon fossils have never been found. And also there have been bones of ancient humans. So then I would show them, oh, here, there are fossils of dinosaurs, right? Things like that. The second part, another reason is because of the differences. You could talk about the difference between Chinese dragons like this, and then Western dragons are definitely a little bit different, okay? Then for this page, I would do model notes with the students, and I would do ASK. I'm guessing maybe some people are not familiar with that. ASK is like our note-taking kind of abbreviation thing we use to try to help students, right? Like A stands for abbreviation, which means make the word short. Some examples would be with, like this, because, BC, people. Symbol for a picture meaning a word, like a happy smiley face, and sign, equal sign, check mark, money sign, etc. And then K is keywords or details, which would be words that are related to the topic or possibly answers to WH questions. And then over here, I do have this here kind of showing how I would organize the notes. So usually we would do it like this, where you have like the topic thesis first in like that first margin. The second margin would be that next main idea. Then it goes to major details and minor details. For this, I would personally do model notes like this. I would play and pause and have the students have notes for them to see from me so they can get an understanding. Later on in the term, I would have them kind of do it on their own. I would probably review this ASK with them many times, so that way they have that. Probably you've already done so in your A2 class, and even talk about the organizer like this, talking about topic and thesis first, then main idea, then major details, and then minor details. And again, no notes here. I would instead write notes in workbook because this is just a fill in the blank, which I would rather than do model notes of how I would want to do it with my own abbreviations and symbols and keywords and things like that, and have the students try to emulate that. Okay. Let's see here. Some tips and tricks. Usually it's going to be the same topic as the reading. This will usually be the opposite perspective from the reading, but not always. Try to produce some WH questions with students before listening to the main ideas. Try to listen together as a class and show students model notes the first few weeks, but then eventually I would probably have them listen on their own. Excuse me. And then review note-taking tips with students such as ASK. Any questions about the comprehend page?
For model notes, are we doing just a prepared version of model notes? Are we doing any pause and play model notes?
Sorry, one more time.
Yeah, are we doing any like pause and play for model notes for be like play?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So I would probably for the first few weeks do that pause and play and show them. So I wouldn't just go to students and be like, oh, here's the notes I would do for this whole thing. I would pause and play, write it on the whiteboard with them, and have them write it on their workbook, and have them understand like, oh, our topic is no proof dragons are real. The first main idea, dragon fossils have never been found, and kind of show them why I would write it this way. Okay. Yeah, great question. And again, for this section, it does say about 25 minutes. I would probably spend more than 25 minutes on this section in the first few weeks, especially if you're doing that pause and play and talking over like ASK and the different note-taking organizers and things like that. It's going to take a lot more time than this 25 minutes, I would say, for those first few weeks. Okay. All right. And then we have the scan. I would make sure that the students are using their notes to answer this. Because they could go back to the previous page and kind of use this sort of fill in the blank to do so. But the whole point, I want them to use the notes. I want them to make sure they're taking good notes. And for this one, it's going to be just true and false. So we can see here, one reason people do not believe in dragons is because they're too large to be real. No, that was not one of the main ideas. The main ideas were that they're different and they're very similar in the same cultures, and there's no fossils. Okay. And then you kind of can go through. Maybe I would work on this with students together at first. Use the notes and maybe have them on the whiteboard and be like, oh, circle there, there's nothing there, and have that show like the evidence of where that is. This one is going to be just 5 true and false questions. There might be questions where you have to put different categories together with maybe showing like the main ideas together and kind of filling in there. But this one for the start is just going to be true and false. Then you have this knowledge map down here, kind of shows what the topic was, main idea, and then some other details provided as well. Okay. For this, it should be about 10 minutes. And the objective here, you want to confirm comprehension and Strickland ability to answer questions about the lecture. Some tips and tricks: have students use notes they took or took in our class model notes to support answers. Answer questions as a class first, similar to the scan reading section, and gradually move independent later on. And then support students with key details in the question if they need it. Okay. Any questions about scan? Great. I want to try and go a little quickly because we only have 5 minutes. This is going to be a collaborate project page. This is another page that you would probably skip if you don't have time. So if we look here, the objective here, you want to apply knowledge by creating project output. And it does say, do not cover these for lessons 3, 6, 9, and 12. And again, this page is something that I would skip if you don't have time. And this is only 10 minutes. So this is not like a V1 project. This is something that's quick, simple, and easy. You do not need to have like a presentation. presentation aspect for this, their C2 class will have that a lot more than here. Okay. So for this one, it would be just like, imagine you're on a deserted island, characteristics and abilities. Again, you can probably create your own project as well, besides the one that's provided. But for this one, it's some characteristics could be like honest, brave, happy, and some abilities like dancing, cooking, flying, breathing fire, etc. And then they have sort of a thing here. Again, this is only 10 minutes. So this is a page that definitely would be skipped if you are running out of time. Okay. Questions about project? Great. And then for the last section, it's going to be alternating between writing and speaking, similar to A2. For this, you need to try to spend at least the last 30 minutes of class doing this, okay? And the objective here is you want to enhance the ability to express thoughts with logically connected support. This will also be the same or similar thing that the students will be doing for their iLearning homework online, okay? So for example, we're doing writing summary here. Their homework looks like this, okay? They are going to be summarizing the page and highlighting those key details, just like we would be doing in the class, okay? For this one, you'll probably just go over what it means to summarize, select main points, paraphrase, use transitions. The individual pages do have kind of a thing here talking about thesis statement and main ideas and details. It's going to be referring to the listening and note-taking that we just did. So we look here, there's no solid proof that dragons were real. That's our topic statement, or sorry, thesis statement, okay? And then some are gonna be no category. Here, paraphrasing, you're just writing into your own words, okay? And then this last section here, talking about using transitions like a listing, first, second, next, time order, before, after, in the past, and then having it fill in there. Then at the very end, you do have a wrap-up page as well. So tips and tricks for writing and speaking. This will be the same skill theory that will be used as students' homework. And it's going to be alternating each week from writing to speaking. So this week, it would be writing when it comes to summary writing. And next week is going to be topical speaking. The students' level up test is also going to be not picture narration, but topical speaking. So that's why it's important to really cover that section. There will be some sections where they'll talk about like maybe some opinion writing and things like that as well, but they'll focus a lot on summary writing and things like that. Okay, and then you have this wrap-up page just talking about today's lesson, existing, no proof they're existing, and sort of those main ideas. Okay. Let me see. If you would like to as well, this segment guide is always a good friend to go to look at, to help you. And also, if you have like a drive at your branch, you might have a specific implementation guide. This will have maybe a good outline with time of what major components you should and need to cover, and those minor ones, which are maybe not as important. And then it might have some media cards or questions for you to use to kind of guide you if you're unsure about anything. Okay. Any questions about C1 low mid? If you're doing the higher C1s, like par or birdie, those are going to be kind of like, I would say similar to like a pre-debate, and they kind of talk about two perspectives as well. The lower levels will look more like this with like an activate page and things like that. So yeah. Any other questions? Feel free to ask. Let me check a couple people that are here that weren't here earlier.
John, can you hear me?
Yes, go for it.
So quick question, when we're doing the topical speaking weeks, are we given any prompts based on the topic, or are we just kind of creating them on the fly or beforehand during our prep?
That is a great question. All right, let me show you. Let's show you a lesson. So I think lesson 2, their topic is about socialization, and I'm pretty sure that it's going to be about that topic. So here, their question is, throughout your socialization process, who or what has affected you the most? And if you want to, you can even maybe think of your own and kind of do that, or even give them maybe an example as that. So usually, yeah, it's going to be something about that topic that was being discussed in class. And then they kind of have this where they have their opinion, reason 1, reason 2, and then trying to give them a way to practice as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I think that is everything. I do have a couple of things I need to send you guys. There's going to be a post-test that I'm going to be posting in the chat. Please do this post-test. It is very similar to the previous test that you did for the pre-test, just going over what the objectives are for certain sections and things like that. And then here is going to be a survey as well. Please complete it. Let me know what things I can improve on, if you would prefer in person. Any suggestions you have too are welcome. Okay, awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a great day. See you later. Take care. Okay, they should be in the chat. Yeah, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.
Jonathan, I have a question really quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Some of us had to leave the C2 early to get to this one, and I think we
Yeah.
missed the link for the form,
Oh,
the review test.
let me see if I can. Was that the C2?
Low mid.
Low mid. Okay, give me 1 second. Let me see if I can find it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I have it. I can give it to you.
Okay.
So I'm
Thank
going
you
to put
so
in the
much.
chat. This one is for C2 low mid.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Take care. Bye bye.